Hi, everyone, and welcome to our podcast today, Confessions of an IT Business Owner. My name's Taylor Thorson. I'm the Channel Logistics Manager here at ConnectBooster, and I have the honor of introducing our podcast host and President of ConnectBooster, Ryan Goodman.
Thanks, Taylor. Welcome, everybody. So what are we? We just flipped March of 2021. Got some snow. That's what you get for tropical Fargo, North Dakota, right? I mean, it's the nature of the beast. Excited to kick off 2021. It's been a little bit slow here because of the pandemic, but we have some really exciting things that you've been working on. Getting the Cash Flow Road Show. Did I say that correct?
Yeah.
All right.
It's got a nice little ring to it, doesn't it?
It does. It's almost like a rap song. You want to sing it? No? Okay.
No one wants to hear that.
I don't blame you. But you've been doing a lot of work on that. So, what's the plan? I think we have something going on here in April, correct?
Yep. End of April, we're going to be kicking it off in Florida. So Miami and Orlando. So if you're around there, stop by. I think it'll be great.
Pay attention. We'll be reaching out to you. And we don't anticipate snow down there, you'll be safe.
On today's episode, we are joined by Amy Babinchak, and she is back again. So we are really excited to have her back on the show. She's great.
Yeah.
And she's been in, the SMB IT industry for 20 plus years, has a ton of knowledge when it comes to anything IT, but is a MVP of Microsoft.
Yeah.
So we were super excited to have her on. Kind of a fun fact here. They won the Partner Award for Microsoft in 2010, too. So she's a bit of a big deal, so we're really excited.
Yeah. In fact, the last time we had her on, she had talked a lot about, we had the chance to talk a lot about women in IT.
Right.
And on this next podcast that you guys are about to see, you'll hear me. She was maybe a little embarrassed when I called her a pioneer, woman pioneer in the IT services industry, but really, some of the challenges that she had overcome early on in her career, even being maybe interviewed when she'd go on site as a contractor, a little more stringently or set aside in a room, and they're asking questions about her. I thought that was incredibly interesting. Also, incredibly cool that she persevered through such a male-dominated industry and to be where she's at today. We're going to be talking about a little bit different subject today. In the past, we talked about her being early on and really a powerhouse again in the IT services industry. We talked a little bit about some of the Microsoft 365 training that she had done. But this time we're going to talk about a subject that I don't think a lot of people have on their radar, which are regulations that seem to be coming into play in the IT service provider MSP space, specifically around some legislation in Louisiana that have been passed that just went into effect beginning of February. Now, there's also some federal standards that are starting to be laid out, played out, and I'm interested in you guys giving us your opinion, even in the comments, as you guys go through this podcast, on your thoughts about what Amy has to say and how she feels. And I would agree with her, the IT services industry needs to gather together, and start paying attention to legislation that we think is going to end up being passed inside of the space.
Definitely. Yeah, we are super excited to get into this. So here's our conversation with Amy.
Well, Amy, thank you for joining me again. I know we were just on a couple months ago, talking a little bit about your history, experience in the IT and MSP industry, and we were talking before the show. I caught you at the tail end of vacation, so we're all really grateful that you were able to jump on the phone today and chat about something that I know is near and dear to your heart, and something that you've been putting a lot of time and effort in, which is the regulation that you see starting to come into play for MSPs, and we don't see that slowing down, right? So I'm excited to dig into that, get your thoughts, perspectives on what's going on and what you see for the future and what you're doing to make an influence there. But before we dig into that, I would love to, what have you been doing in these off hours? You've been up on vacation. You've been showing me some incredible pictures, and is beautiful. I'd love to have you share with our guests, what you've been up to.
Oh, I've been up in Charlevoix, Michigan, and really kind of all over the tip of the lower peninsula here, and just going cross-country skiing and snowshoeing and taking a look at all of the amazing blue ice that gets piled up underneath the Mackinac Bridge at this time of year. And it's just, it's a winter wonderland. It's such a great place to be. The sun's been shining. It's been between 15 and 20 degrees. It's been gorgeous and beautiful snow, great conditions for skiing.
That's incredible. Amy showed me this picture of those ice pilings, and she could have told me she was exploring Antarctica at the moment. It was so scenic and beautiful. I mean, I would have lost a bet on that for sure. I mean, incredibly cool, and good for you for taking that time off and clarity breaks. I think many of us could learn from that. So let's all.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and you have to take time off. Your creativity suffers if you don't. It's just hard to keep going. If I try to get some time off every quarter. Really, I think it's critical.
Great advice. So the last time we got together, we talked a lot about a lot of subjects, and I know we touched a little bit on, MSP regulation, but we talked a lot about, again, your journey, beginning in technology, talked a lot about you as a person, which was incredibly insightful and valuable, and talked a lot about you as what I would consider a pioneer in early IT, women in IT, which is an incredibly cool story and really inspiring.
Feeling really old now, Ira. Thanks for that.
Hey, sorry.
A pioneer.
Was that a bad? Or they're like, I've had this before. I know I'm going way off script here, but they're like, oh, Ryan, you look great in that shirt. I would have never bought it, but it looks really good on you. Oh, that's funny. Thank you for calling me out on that. That was great. So what have you been working on since our last discussion?
What am I working on?
Broad, I know.
It is broad. I know that's a very broad question. And the thing that I'm putting a lot of my energy into right now, I can't tell you about yet. It's kind of a secret.
Yeah, no worries.
But I'm actually, I'll tell you this much. I'm writing my first book.
Incredible. That's cool.
And so I'm kind of excited about it. It's something that I've wanted to do. It is related to the IT industry, although it won't necessarily be exclusive to the IT industry because it's more on the business side of things. And yeah, I don't know. Lately, I've just been feeling like a lot of stuff is spewing out of me that I just want to get down on paper and tell people about.
Oh, that's incredibly cool. We'll have to keep our ears to the rails as that project progresses and you release it out to the world. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing. So I'm going to shift gears on you a little bit and start honing in on, really the thing that I'd love to talk with you about today and uncover, which is the potential of data privacy, cybersecurity related legislation for MSPs. This is something that we had uncovered, which is the more I've looked into it, and trust me, I'm touching the tip of the iceberg compared to your knowledge. And so that's why I'm so excited to talk to you. I looked at it and I'm like, people aren't talking about this enough right now. And I know that you feel the same and you're taking some actions around it, but I discovered specifically the Louisiana Act. So I'm going to get a little bit in the weeds here. Act 117, Senate Bill 273 was passed middle of 2019. And as I was going back and just doing some cursory research again, this was implemented now in Louisiana as of this February, beginning of this February, 2021. And, I'd love your thoughts about what it is today and what it isn't right now. Right. But also where you see that as a precursor. I think probably one of the best things that I had heard from you in pre-interview was like the first shots come across the bow. Right. So I'd just love to hear from you, your thoughts around what that is, the implementation, and what you see coming down the pipe.
Yeah, whatever phrase we want to use, tip of the iceberg, first shot across the bow, however you want to think of this is definitely that landmark moment,
Yeah.
right? This is really the first serious regulation that calls out. In fact, it's one of the only ones I can think of that I know of that actually calls out the word MSP,
Yeah.
right, as being the regulated entity, and MSSP. So they wrap in the security folks as well. And calling out our specific industry by the names that we call ourselves, that we think nobody understands or knows about.
Right.
Well, suddenly they do,
Yeah.
right? And the reason they do is because of ransomware.
Mhm.
Ransomware has brought our industry into focus for businesses. They understand that there are these outsourced companies that are supposed to be responsible for their technology and made a lot of promises, and maybe we're not able to keep all of the promises that their website says that they're going to keep.
Yeah.
And so that really has brought it in. And what Louisiana did is name MSPs and MSSPs and create a registration process, because the problem that they had, right? The city of New Orleans got shut down
Yeah.
for ransomware. The city came to a grinding halt. Well, that's incredibly expensive. That gets people's attention. Probably the people that sold or perpetrated the crime made a lot of money off of that, but city and state of Louisiana lost a lot of money, and they want to know why, and they want someone to hold responsible.
Yeah.
And so when they looked around, they said, well, who are these MSPs and these MSSPs? And found that there's no national organization that they can go to and say, hey, tell me who these people are that are operating in my state.
Sure.
And so they basically created their own registration process. And they said, if you're going to do business in Louisiana with any government entity,
Mhm.
so it's fairly narrow at this point, right? You have to register with the state. And further than that, and I think more importantly, is you must report any security incident that occurs.
Right.
So not only do we have registration, but we also have a responsibility framework showing up. And somewhere where government agencies that are looking to outsource can now look at this register and your reputation and decide who they want to do business with. So that's something that the consumer has never been able to do before in our industry.
Right.
And yeah, I do definitely see this as the tip of the iceberg for sure.
Yeah. It feels like the door's been cracked open. There's a foot, and like you said, right now it's pretty narrow. But at this point, and this is just speculation on my part, it would seem that there would be an acceleration here as time goes on.
Mhm.
Once that door's been cracked
Y-
open, doesn't.
Yeah, I think the only reason we haven't seen that yet is because of the pandemic, right? Governments got sidetracked into, they have a lot of other things on their plate right now. But they will circle back around and start to deal with this again, because the ransomware is certainly an issue that hasn't gone away.
Yeah.
It continues to get worse, in fact, as they get more and more clever. In fact, the IRS put out a document recently reminding people that it is illegal to do business and you will be fined if you are doing business with terrorist organizations, which many of these ransomware
Defined.
companies are defined as that. So not only could you pay the ransom, but they're also federal government's going to come down on you and you will get fined or jailed for doing business with terrorists. So no, there's a lot of seriousness that is coming down here, and you can imagine if that business thinks that it was your job to protect them from ransomware, and maybe it was your advice that they pay the ransom to get back up quickly, and then here comes the IRS to tell them that they've committed a federal crime in doing so.
Yeah.
So I
Like
mean,
an
it's
awful lot of liability floating around.
for sure, yeah. Insurance companies in the past have also been recommending that they just pay the ransom because it was the quickest way and least expensive way in some cases for them to get their insured corporations back up and running again. But that's that's not going to fly very long here either.
No.
So there's a huge amount of change floating around out there, and it will coalesce into something very serious for all of us soon.
Well, I appreciate you focusing on this and, being a voice of reason and trying to create awareness around it because you're right, this isn't going away. So we can't put our heads in the sand. That's not going to fix anything. We need to start controlling the things you can control, and something that maybe feels a movement that's you don't have a lot of control over
Yeah.
the momentum, but there are certainly areas that I think you're going to be working to create a voice for the MSP, and try to put some framework around this. And I know I'm getting ahead of myself in the question, so I'll pause there and I'm going to get a little more for you.
All right.
I'm creating my own problems here. I'm creating our own problems. As an MSP and a technology, service provider, how do you feel about states implementing these rules for MSPs?
I'm not excited about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been in this business for 20 years without having it. And so, I'm happy not to have it.
Yeah.
But I don't think that that's realistic anymore. And that's where, I'm just trying to be a realist in this and say, hey, pretty much every other professional in the world is registered, organized,
Yeah.
in some way, and we've sort of slipped under the radar for a number of years. And it's just I see it just as part of the maturing of our industry, right? That uh, right, lawyers and accountants who IT people love to compare themselves to, right? You outsource to an expert, you outsource to your accountant, you outsource to your lawyer. You don't do those things yourself. You're going to, you outsource your IT. We're equivalent. Well, those industries have very significant regulations and, organizations that they're members of to indicate that they're professionals in that thing. And we don't have that. So we're out there saying, hey, we're just like CPAs. We're just like lawyers, and take my word for it. Yeah.
Hey guys, here with a quick break from our show to remind you to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you're listening. If you have suggestions for future episodes or you want to be a guest on the podcast, email us at podcast@connectbooster.com or send us a message on Facebook or Twitter, and we'll be sure to point you in the right direction. Lastly, to find out more about our guests, check out their information in the podcast description. Thanks for listening to the Confessions of an IT Business Owner. Let's get back to the show. Do you know if I know this is kind of a tough question, but do you know other states that are working on similar rules right now, or is Louisiana kind of the state case study?
Well, Louisiana is the farthest along. So we've heard of some other states that are looking at the issue, and it's been tossed around, but nothing is really coalesced in yet.
Yeah.
Now, there is one area that has really progressed, though, and that is all 50 states now have enacted privacy laws.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not directly related to us, but it is something that does hit our industry, and something that's weirdly quiet in our industry. It's not been talked a lot about what our responsibilities might be now under these privacy laws and how that changes the recommendations that we need to make to our clients. It went pretty quick. We went from the EU having their GDPR, and then Canada, and then Australia, and it sort of flew around the different countries. And here in the United States, we left it up to each state. And now every state has enacted a data privacy law. So usually when this happens, because these data privacy laws will be different in every state, making it difficult to do business across states.
Yeah.
Usually when that happens, then we'll see the federal government come in and consolidate that law so that at least we're all operating under the same privacy laws when you try to do business from state to state. So that's probably going to be the next evolution of that.
Yeah, and that's that really leads me into the next question. Do you see federal oversight eventually coming into play over, MSP specific regulation? One of the things that I had uncovered was cybersecurity maturity model certification, which is, a set of standards, kind of compile a bunch of different rules and regulations, to speak as a layman here, about it. But it feels like that may be the beginnings of solving the same problem that will happen with state by state regulation of MSPs.
Yeah, so that's the CMMC. It is it's an effort by the government, pretty much the Defense Department, really, to create a framework and then enforce that everyone adheres to it. So there have been these frameworks in the past of, NIST, 800-171, the ISO, whatever number they're on now, 12,007 or something like that. So there've been a lot of efforts, and there were all these different standards. And so what they did was they consolidated them all and said, we're going to call it the CMMC, and it'll have levels 1 through 5.
Okay.
And then they have defined what each of those levels are. And so now as a company goes after a federal contract, and interestingly, it's not just the federal contract, it is all of the subcontractors attached to that initial contract. So you could be the tier 2, tier 3, down under that, not be the actual contractor, and still have to be CMMC certified. And so this is really going to open things up. And there's a lot of stuff in there. There's fines for for not adhering. There's auditors and various levels, right? Various levels of people that are allowed to implement this, and people that are allowed to audit it. And they have this thing even where you have to register as a corporation that's going to employ the people that are going to implement the CMMC, right? So there's a CMMC registered person, and then there's the company that holds the registered people, and then there's the auditors of the actual work. And all of these things have to happen in order for you to be qualified to do work for the federal government. And so, yeah, this is their attempt to say, hey, we're only going to do business with big companies that take their security very seriously and have met these criteria and can prove that they've met these criteria.
This is just a thought kind of that popped into my head, but, we've talked a lot on this podcast about some of the consolidation that we see in the industry. And it would seem like this is also going to be a catalyst where, it could be, it just sounds tougher to operate, and maybe one of those drivers as well.
Yeah, if you're an MSP, this is a point now where you have to think about who you're going to be in the future.
Yeah.
Right. Do you want to have CMMC registered staff? Now, the thing is, my reading of this says that those CMMC registered staff have to be members of a CMMC registered organization.
Sure.
So they have to be employees of that company.
Yeah.
And there's pretty good sized numbers attached to the annual renewal fees to say that, hey, we're a company that has registered CMMC staff, and each of the staff has continuing education requirements, and they have tests they have to pass, and they have money they have to pay to be that registered status. And then the company is doing the same, right? So it's a big investment.
Yeah.
As an MSP, are we going to give that to the MSSPs of the world? Are we going to give it to these new organizations that will certainly pop up just to service the CMMC? Or are we going to decide to play in that field? That's kind of where we're at right now. And this is the decision time, right? You can go out right now and get yourself registered. You can go out and register your corporation. The auditors aren't here yet. They're still working out that exam phase and stuff. Um, and I'm trying to remember the date. It's not coming to me.
Sure.
It's a couple years out yet of
Okay.
when this actually takes effect, that the federals, the Department of Defense and some ancillary departments will not be able to do business with anyone that doesn't have these certifications.
So the
But
time to be looking
now's the
now.
time to get ready. The time is now. You have to be
Oh,
in position now, and it's not easy, right? If you look at CMMC 1, which is the lowest level, it requires data loss prevention implementation. I can tell you there's almost no business out there that has DLP processes in place today.
mm,
If you look at, well, in my world, in the SMB world, it just hasn't been a thing.
yeah.
But that's for the lowest level. You have to have that into place.
Wonderful.
And if you're a Microsoft 365 shop, that means moving at least up into the Microsoft 365 Business Premium plan, which is $20 a month. And I see still a lot of companies selling the lower end plans, which are not going to qualify at all. So a lot of changes. And if you don't prepare your clients for it now, like they're going to come to you with this, oh yeah, here's this thing I have to certify that I'm
Right.
CMMC, and this is another instance where the MSP is going to be held responsible and say, well, you said I'm doing all this. You filled out the form for me and I turned the form in, and then the auditor comes through and says, well, you guys didn't pass. You don't have any of this stuff. Customer's going to be pretty upset. Right. So now's the time really to start to be talking about it, to figure out where your MSP is going to land in this.
You alluded to price as well. Not only cost of having the certifications for individuals and the businesses, but then um, every business knows that eventually slides and moves down to the customer, and there's going to be this awkward gap in time. You'd alluded to preparing your customer from what's coming, and that's not only from a technology perspective, but it's then the pricing around those services, and they're going to be more
Yeah.
expensive, right? I mean,
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, think about it. Your customer is going after this contract, whether they're 1, 2, 3 tier person in this fulfilling this government contract,
yeah,
and they bid it out, not knowing that there's all of this stuff that they're going to have to do on their infrastructure side, which may cost them tens of thousands of dollars. They're going to be pretty unhappy that that
so,
you knew about it and you didn't tell them, right? That this was something that they were going to have to do and it was going to be expensive, and license changes and implementation changes and employee changes for sure, as far as education and getting everybody up to speed on what they have to do. Because I don't, you may not be aware, but in a lot of these new security things, I really see the responsibility for security shifting all the way down to the end user.
hmm,
Specifically when we're talking about data loss prevention policies, because that means classifying data properly so that the correct restrictions and permissions get placed on those files. And that's an end user training thing, right? Yeah, we can set up that framework, but if the end user doesn't do it,
yeah.
then they'll be in violation. So there's a lot to this. There's going to be a lot. It's and you know nobody really should be overwhelmed or upset by this. Change is what we do,
Yeah.
right? Whenever there's change, whenever there's confusion, whenever there's new tech, whenever there's changes in security, changes in responsibility, that's when MSPs can make money.
Yeah.
So there's great opportunity in times of great change.
No, that's a great point. Um, as we've been talking about all of this regulation and what's happening in what I would consider, lack of maybe real awareness around what's going on from the broader community. Right now, there's really not any central organization, that's advocating for MSPs and MSSPs, around this issue. So, what are some of your thoughts on how the MSP community can address that lack of an organizing body?
It's gonna come to bite us at some point, right? We don't. we don't have a bar association. We don't have an AICPA. We don't have a board, like doctors do. We don't even have, we got nothing.
Yeah.
We're just all independents out here. Maybe we're part of some, user groups or something. We have a couple of organizations, but none of them are national. None of them are taking up this mantle of organizing. And interestingly, when you look back through history, this is exactly how all of these other organizations started,
Came to.
right? Um, lawyers decided that they wanted to keep certain people out of their industry. And so, so they formed the bar, and then they went around and said, hey, you're not really a lawyer if you're not part of the bar.
Right.
Um, and, so it can be done that way. Otherwise, it's going to be done through regulation. And if it's done through regulation, then you end up with something more like, it'd be more treated like mechanics or building contractors, people like that, where they have to go in and get licensed to do the work. And yeah, you can still work without the license, but people are going to look at you differently, or they're going to treat you differently.
That makes sense.
Your opportunities may be different too. I heard in California, if you're not a licensed contractor, you can do jobs up to $600. Anything more than that, and you need to be a licensed contractor. You
Interesting.
can't collect. There's some plus sides on that too. I know in Michigan that if you're a licensed contractor and the customer doesn't pay, you get to put a lien on the building.
Okay.
Right. So there can be good things
Yep.
associated with this, but the lack of an organization is it's a big deal. I mean, that's honestly that's the reason why the Louisiana legislation got going in the first place.
And all born out of that pain. I mean, so I mean, it's you look at it, it's no surprise that legislation was put forward. They just came off of paying millions of dollars, and
Well, it's the consumer. The consumer wants to know. In that case, the consumer is a government entity,
Mm.
but in general, the consumer would like to be able to sort out who's qualified and who might not be qualified. And currently, there's no way for them to do that, right? And we all know it, right? We sit down with customers, then they don't know how to interview
Right.
an IT firm. They sit down, they talk to everybody, and then they decide to hire one. They hope for the best, right? And sometimes it works out, and sometimes it doesn't. And they go through that process again, or they ask a friend or whatever. But um, they don't have anywhere that they can go to at least narrow the field somewhat to say, okay, I at least want to be sure that I'm talking to people that are legitimate in this field. They haven't they take it seriously as a career, because I have important things I have to I have to get my PCI compliance. I have to do my CMMC. I have to adhere to these privacy rules. Businesses have important things they need to do, so they need to know who they can trust.
Now you have a Facebook community that you've started up to start inviting other
Mhm.
industry professionals and start addressing and creating conversation around this issue. Correct?
Yep. Yeah, I have a Facebook group which is called MSP Legislation and Regulation. Um, any MSPs or people that are interested in this topic really are interested to join. What we hope to do with that group, we're about 600 strong now, maybe just slightly under that. What we hope to do really is to kind of, at this point, we're just sort of keeping everyone aware of what's
Happening.
going on in their states, right? Um, but we also are encouraging people to reach out to their legislators
Yeah.
to let them know that they're there and they're willing to talk about this, and that they would like to be involved if there's any legislation coming down. And, working in government, trying to make those contacts can be frustrating,
Mm-hmm.
because if they don't have a piece of legislation in their hand, they don't really want to talk to you today, because they have so much going on. They're actually extremely busy people. But if you get on their contact list and you let them know that, hey, if you have IT security things that come up, privacy things that come up, regulation and any kind of legislation come up in this field, I'm here to, let, call on me. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
I can be a representative of the industry in the area, because otherwise they don't know who to call. So they'll just, like, oh, we have an IT thing coming, we'll just give Netflix a call and see what they think about that, right? Because that's who's in their Rolodex.
Right.
Well, they're not going to give them a good opinion.
Right.
It'd be better if they talk to local firms that are actually going to be affected by this thing.
Hmm.
So that's the first step that we're doing. My hope is that along the way that we will be able maybe to create some position papers
Okay.
so that people also have those that the group has put together. Um, so, we can kind of had a standard thing that
Yeah.
they could, grab it. They find out about something in their area, they can grab it, they can send it over to them. And so we may do that in a few different areas. And so, ultimately, what we need is that national organization, I think. I also don't think I'm the person to create that, so don't be
Sure.
looking at me that way.
Enough.
But I do think that that's where we're headed. I don't know how long it's going to take to get there, but there will be an awakening at some point, and I'm pretty confident that that's what'll happen.
So from our conversation today, and again, just thank you so much for. I mean, I caught you at the end of your vacation. I mean, I'm just really grateful that you came on and are sharing all this.
All I was
Wisdom.
going to do is
Uh,
check out of my place and drive today, so don't feel too bad.
okay. Well, thanks. Thank you. That's nice of you. Um, uh, some of the things that MSPs need to do to start getting prepared for this. One, I mean, you need to get out to the Facebook group, and that's right now that seems like a important action item. If I'm sitting in that chair and saying, okay, I need to start educating myself and start becoming aware of what's going on, and then dig into um, understanding what's going on in the Louisiana case and what's happening around regulation there and what that may look like for you inside of your state, and then paying attention to the CMMC cert, and what
Mhm.
that means for cost, what that means for staffing, what that means for your organization, and what that means for some of your end biz, the customers that you serve, and what that could mean for costs, and start understanding what that is and preparing and start having conversations. Are there any other action items that you would recommend, you know beyond that?
Well, the other thing that I would do is to start to reach out to your state
That's
legislators in your area,
yes.
right? Let them know that you exist. You probably won't get any farther than that yet, but let them know that you exist, that you're willing to talk about these issues. Make sure that you're on their list of people they can call, so that you're known, and you may have to call them from time to time and remind them of
Yeah.
that. But you want to get to know those people so that when it happens, that you'll be aware of it. You can be part of that solution that's coming down.
Great advice. Thank you for calling that out. That's really important. Any other thoughts you'd like to share, before we close on the topic today?
um no, I really, I think we just need to, I don't know who this national organization is going to be. you know I, someone will need to form a nonprofit, right?
Yeah.
That's what these are,
Yeah.
right? But it has to have a nexus in every state,
Yeah.
right, in order to be effective. And we as an industry have to decide that we're all going to be members, right? We're all going to support, we're going to join together, we're going to have a single voice, and we're all going to be part of something larger than ourselves. And that's a big change because we sort of all got started by just hanging our shingles out as an independent.
Mhm.
And to now to turn that kind of on its head and say, no, I'm actually part of a larger industry, right? I'm a piece of something that's bigger than myself. And yeah, I think it's just like I said earlier, I think it's just a natural maturing of our industry. It's something that we should embrace. You're in the payments industry. That's highly regulated industry for good reason too, because people got taken advantage of. And, when that happens, the people that are doing a good job want to be able to say, hey, that's not me. I'm over here. I'm doing a really good job. I want a way to stand out from the rest. And this is a way. I really do see this as a way that we can do that. That firms that are doing a really good job will stand out. They should have a way to stand out and stand up and say, "No, I'm over here. I'm doing a great job for all of my clients. I really care about data security, and this is." I just feel like it's inevitable, right?
Yeah.
It's not something that we're going to avoid. We can't stick our head in the sand and pretend this isn't going to happen. We've come onto the radar, and once that happens, you're not going to fall off it.
Get ready, control what you can control, and thank you again.
Yeah, you can have it done to you, or you can be part of the
Yeah,
process.
exactly.
That's it.
Part of the
That's what
conversation.
it is, right?
That's
And
a good
it's
explanation.
much better to be part of the conversation than to just find out that something happened without you.
100%. I have a feeling that we're probably going to be talking again in the future as this subject matter continues to progress. So again, thanks for your time today. Thanks for your insight, and the awareness that you're putting around this, and being an advocate, and just working to create some visibility around what's going on, and look forward to touching in on updates as things move forward, around MSP regulation in the industry. Thanks, Amy. And
You're welcome.
Drive. I caught you at the end of your vacation, but have a safe drive on the way home.
I hope to.
You will.
Hey, thanks for inviting me back. It's really appreciate you having me on again.
Oh, very welcome. Thank you.
Do
It's
it again.
very valuable. Looking forward to it.
All right.
Well, that was a lot of information. Couple of takeaways. I think there are a lot of things that MSPs should be paying attention to, at least start to align their staff and their companies around some of the certifications, and start doing at least some research into the legislation that's been passed and how they can align their companies, what seems to be the future here at some point of regulation in the MSP space. And she related that a lot to what happens in accounting or legal, and the standards and tests that are put in place in those industries. And I guess especially put in that light, it seems like a pretty natural progression that's going to happen. I'd also recommend, I know she had mentioned her Facebook group where there's a number of MSPs coming together and starting to discuss these issues. So I think that's also a great resource for everyone to get in touch with and be a part of. As if you're not interested, I think after this episode, you should be interested in what's happening with MSP regulation and registration.
And like we said, it'll be here before you know it.
Agreed. I think she related that to GDPR, consumer protections, and how that California wrote legislation pretty quick, and then that went across 50 states inside of the U.S.
Yes.
Agreed.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. On behalf of Ryan and the ConnectBooster team, we just want to say thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Sounds great.